Talk about on Pesach we went me'avdus l'chirus. On Pesach we went from freedom to being from slavery to being free, right? And that's why on Pesach we do different things. We do certain things that resemble slavery, and we do certain things that resemble freedom, right? Why do we do things that resemble freedom, and why do we do things that resemble slavery? The answer is because on Pesach we're celebrating the fact that we went from being slaves to becoming free men. We're celebrating the fact that we went from being slaves to becoming free men. So we act like kings. We dip, we lean, we act as if we're free kings, free ben chayron. We sit back on chairs, we lean, and that's how we act. The question is, did we really become free? When we left Mitzrayim, did we become free men? And what is the meaning of the word free men? So the Pasuk tells us, we said, Noichi Hashem Elokecha, Asher Tetzicha me'eretz Mitzrayim. I am Hashem, your God, who took you out of Mitzrayim, right? The first Aseret Dibros. I am Hashem, right? What's it telling us? It's telling us, it's a Shaila in the Rishonim. If the first of the Aseret Dibros is one of the 613 mitzvahs, or if it's a prerequisite to the 613 mitzvahs. Because Anoich Hashem Elokecha, if you look at the words, is actually not a commandment. It's not telling us to do or not to do. It's just a statement. I am Hashem, your God, who took you out of Mitzrayim. It's similar to if I said to you, I am Mordy Weinberg, who's giving this shir. So, what should you do or not do based on that? Nothing. So, therefore, Anoich Hashem Elokecha Asher Tzich Mitzrayim is an interesting commandment. And it's a shaila in the place in the Rishonim if it's actually considered one of the commandments. And either way, it seems to be that it's kind of a prerequisite to all the rest of the commandments. And what Hashem is saying is, I am Hashem, your God, who took you out of Mitzrayim. That is point number one. First, you have to accept me as a king, and then, because of that, I can give you the rest of the commandments. So why do you have to listen to all the commandments? Because Anoich Hashem Elokecha Asher Tzich me'eretz Mitzrayim, we took you out of Mitzrayim. But if you look at, there's two more words thrown in over there. It says Anoich Hashem Elokecha Asher Tzich me'eretz Mitzrayim. I am Hashem who took you out of Mitzrayim. Mi beis avadim, from a house of slavery. Why does it say from a house of slavery? So one shot that's given is very simple. If I buy a slave from his slavery, what happens? I own him. It becomes my slave. So one pshat is Hashem saying like this: I am Hashem your God who took you out of Mitzrayim, mi beis avadim, from the house of slavery, that I was koine you to be my servants. I was koine you. I acquired you, and that's the prerequisite to the rest of the Torah. Why do you have to listen to the whole Torah? Because Hashem took us out of Mitzrayim, mi beis avadim, and therefore we got to follow the rules because we're His servants. By the parsha of Eved Ivri, so if Eved Ivri wants to stay by his master after 6 years, right? Eved Ivri is a Jewish slave who's sold into slavery. Now we won't get into a whole discussion, but the Jewish slavery is very, very similar to just being a paid worker. If anything, the slave's rights are quite strong, but it's a different discussion. But anyway, so there's a Jewish slave, and a Jewish slave is only for a period of 6 years maximum. If after 6 years you would like to continue, then there's a way of continuing up until the coming Yovel, the coming Jubilee year, the 50th year. And not 50 years, but up till the coming Yovel, however long it is. And if he wants to do that, he has to get his ear, gets put by the doorpost, close the door on him, and it pops his ear. And what do we say to him? Why do we do his ear? Because the pasuk says, Oizen zu sheshaymas, this ear that heard, avadaihem, my servants, v'loi avadim la'avadim, and not servants to servants. an ear that heard by Har Sinai, Avadahim, my servants, and not servants to other servants. So, you see clearly that, by the way, where did it say by Har Sinai the words, Avadahim, v'lo avadim la'avadim? I'm not sure where it is. I mean, it's not a statement. It could be this is the pasuk. I'm not sure if this is true, but it could be. I am your God who took you out of Beis Avadim. You are now avadayim v'lo avadim to the avadim, to other servants of mine. So therefore, we have become Hashem's avadim. So again, I ask the question: did we become free? Did we go l'cheirus? Or did we just go from one form of avdus to another form of avdus? It seems like when we went out of Mitzrayim, we went tachas the avdus of Hashem. We became servants to Hashem. The pasuk tells us, when did we become Klal Yisrael? When did we become Jews? The pasuk tells us, b'tzeis, we say this in Hallel. We say it on the Seder night. We say it all year round on Hallel. We say it like this. Should always try to pay attention. But says Yisrael mitzrayim, when Yisrael went out of Mitzrayim, Beis Yaakov me'am lois, right? Beis Yaakov went out from a foreign nation, a foreign tongue. Haisa Yehuda l'kadshay. That's when Yehuda became Hashem's kodesh, Hashem's separate to holy to Hashem. Yisrael mam shaloisav. Yisrael became ruled over. When we went out of Mitzrayim, we became ruled over by Hashem. We became servants to Hashem. So, what happened when we left Mitzrayim seems to be that we went from Avdus, from becoming Avdei Paroi, to becoming Avdei Hashem. There's this famous Shiloh, why did we actually have to go down to Mitzrayim? It's very nice that Hashem took us out of Mitzrayim. Mm-hmm. But why did Hashem put us into Mitzrayim? So, really is a different shir if people have been here coming for other years, or if we spoke about this Shiloh, why do we have to go down to Mitzrayim? There's different answers given. But one answer given was that one answer that's given as to create a nation of Klal Yisrael, to become Avdei Hashem, to makabel the Torah, to makabel the rules, to take free men would have been too hard for a free man to accept. I'm not sure exactly how it said, but something along these lines. Don't quote me on this one. Also not for Kosher Tube, don't quote me. What?
This was on fourth.
We had to go down to Mitzrayim to become Avadim, to learn what it's like to be an Eved, in order to go straight from being an Eved Par to being Eved Hashem. I think Reb Shamshon Falher says this, I'm not sure if I'm correct. That we first had to become Avadim in order to transfer that Avdus straight from Paroi to Hashem. We had to be Avadim first. So, based on all these different things, we're saying that we're continue to be servants, right? We continue to be servants of Hashem. We just went from Avdus to Paro to Avdus to Hashem. So why do we call this going from Avdus to Cheres? Why do we call this going from slavery to freedom? So the answer to this question is really a simple answer, and the answer is we first have to define what does Cheres mean? What does freedom mean? What is true freedom? So if I would throw that out to the crowd, what would you say freedom means?
Freedom to choose.
Freedom to choose, right? Freedom to choose what?
To do what you want. You want to do a mitzvah, you don't want to do it. You want to
do anything, whatever you want, right? Freedom is, ultimate freedom is to choose whatever you want, right? So freedom would mean no rules, no boundaries, no restrictions. Whatever I want to do, I do. That's freedom. So who's the freest man in the world? The guy who has absolutely no rules, maybe someone who's extremely wealthy, he's got no restrictions, anything his heart desires he could have, he has as much money as he wants. If he wants to buy a jet and fly around the world and take whoever he wants with him and all kinds of food, anything he wants in the world is accessible to him, and nothing and nobody could stop him from doing anything. He is the absolute freest person in the world, in your opinion?
That's who Muammar Gaddafi thought he was.
Is that he has the freedom to choose what he wants to do at the end of the day?
Okay, but if you're poor, how free are you? What could you do?
No, because you're asking me, so if we became servants to God, but we still had that.
No lumdus. I don't want to hear lumdus. Straight question.
I thought you wanted.
I'm asking you a question.
Then I'm taking that back.
No, freedom to choose. Freedom to choose is what we call freedom. So who is the freest man in the world?
The one who's more wealthy than others.
Yeah, that's not the main point, the wealth. The main point is he has no restrictions. He could do whatever he wants, and he's got the ability to do it. The wealth gives you that ability. That's all I'm saying. So who's the freest man in the world? Someone who could choose whatever he wants. That's ultimate freedom, right? If he wants to eat whatever he wants, he can eat whatever he wants. He wants to think whatever he wants. Anything he wants to do, that's freedom. That's ultimate freedom. That's what we understand the idea of freedom is. There's a very interesting parsha in the Torah, and this parsha in the Torah seems to go against all logic, and we'll see how the Torah addresses this kind of question. Pasuk says like this: Kiseitze lemochama aloivecha. It's a parsha in the Torah. Parsha is Kiseitze. The end of Dvarim. The parsha says like this: Kiseitze lemochama aloivecha. If you go out to war against your enemies, unesane Hashem lekecha biyadacha, and Hashem makes you win. So you win the war. You have to go out to war against your enemies. These are enemies of Hashem, and Hashem makes you win. V'shavisa shivya, and you capture a captive. You capture the whole captive, right? V'ra'isa b'shivya, and you find in the shivya Eishes Yifas Torah, a beautiful lady. V'chashakta b'ya, and you desire her. V'lakachta l'cha le'isha, you could take for her as your wife, but you have to do a whole process. You bring her to your house. You cut off her hair. You make her nails grow long. Whatever, a whole story. How you're allowed to do it? Shaila, if it's the first time you were with her. Maybe you're allowed to be with her one time in the battle, and you just, no problem, and only afterwards you have to do the whole process. Maybe before you could even be with her once, you have to do the whole process. Different shaila. But there's a concept in the Torah, which is that you find a beautiful woman in battle and you desire her, you could take her. Why? She's not Jewish. We're not talking about a Jewish lady. And you take her to be a wife. I mean, why would you be allowed to do that? And especially according to people who hold that actually in battle, B'shas Ma'aseh, no, you don't do anything. You just live with her, straight up, no problem. What's Pshat? Very strange parsha in the Torah. So Rashi brings right away, Lo dibra Torah ela keneged Yetzer Hara. The Torah is talking keneged the Yetzer Hara. Shem eina Kadosh Baruch Hu matira, if Hashem would not make her mutter, yisena be'isser. You would end up marrying her be'isser anyways. Aval nasa, wait, that's why it's mutter. We'll see the next part in a second. So why is it mutter? Because if it wouldn't be mutter, you would do it anyways. Interesting concept, right? What does that mean?
Screw up right away.
You're going to screw up, not for sure.
For sure.
Why? What does this mean? What does this concept mean? What this concept means is the Torah is teaching us such an important lesson that this is a lifelong lesson that we should always have to try to remember. Every year, Kiseitze Meretz Hashem, we try to remember it. Remember it again. Pesach, remember lots of times. The message is, you are not a free man in the face of your desires. When it comes to desire, when it comes to taiva, the taiva,
Sorry.
the taiva could overpower your freedom. And even though you think in your mind that you have a freedom to choose, you have the freedom to choose what you want to do, what the Torah is telling you is no, you don't. Like Dibra Torah, the Yetzer Hara is going to win. And therefore there's only one solution. Let's talk practically for a second. There's only one solution to the Yetzer Hara. You know what it is? Don't put yourself in a situation where you're going to be tested. Because if you put yourself in a situation where you're going to be tested, you're going to lose. And therefore, you will, that's a fact.
Very good point.
And therefore, what the Torah tells you to do is, stay away from that situation.
But in war,
One second. But in war, where you have to go to war, and you can't stay away from this situation, what does the Torah say? Okay, it's mutter.
Okay, so
One second.
Yeah.
Okay, it's mutter. Why is it mutter? Because you have to go there. So what the Torah is telling you is like this. Normally, If there's a street somewhere where there's bad things, don't go to that street. Stay as far away as you can. Put up blocks. Put up guards. If you have internet, maybe you shouldn't have internet at all. If you shouldn't have internet at all. If you do have internet, get a filter. Put up blocks, because if you don't, you're gonna lose. You're gonna lose the battle. One second. But if you have to have, so it's kind of like this. Don't have internet. If you have to have internet, put up filters. If you can't have filters, then we're just going to make everything mutter. No problem. Just do whatever you want. Because there's no choice. That's what's happening over here. So Hashem's telling you, of course you're not allowed to live with Goyish women. Of course not. But, and what should you do? Stay away from them. But in a situation where you say to them, you're going out to battle, and what did they used to do? They would send out their pretty women dressed up provocatively in order to entice people. That's what they used to do on purpose in battle. So what Hashem's saying is, the Torah says you're going to lose. So we're just going to, Hashem makes a mutter. In such a situation, it's mutter. The Torah is teaching us that when you are forced to be in a situation where you're going to have a very difficult choice, you are probably going to lose. What?
I was going to say, so I shouldn't take my secretary with me on a business trip for 6 months to Los Angeles.
Right, exactly. Got it. No, you shouldn't. No, seriously. I mean, we're not going to get into practical situations, but, a lot of Rabbanim try to have male secretaries, for example. Try not to have a female secretary. Or if you do have a female secretary, it's in a situation where, maybe she's older. I mean, even then it's not safe, but maybe there's other people around. There's ways of doing it where it's a little bit safer or less safe. And even the relationship, trying to keep boundaries in the relationship, keep it work. Yeah, but that's a different discussion. How to deal in the workplace is a whole different sugya. The point of the matter is that what we call freedom is not freedom. Freedom to choose, right? What you call freedom to choose. What is freedom to choose? If you're in freedom to choose, you're going to lose. That's not freedom. That's slavery to desire. Freedom is what the world calls freedom is really slavery to desire. If you are free to choose something, you're going to choose it, and you're going to give into your desires. So what the Torah is telling us in this parsha of Kiseitze is, freedom is, I once read a book a long time ago, I was talking about a futuristic society. And in this futuristic society, they had a belief that there's two kinds of freedom. There's something called freedom to, and there's something called freedom from. Anyone ever heard of that? Freedom to means freedom to choose whatever you want. And freedom from means freedom from choosing whatever you want. It's the opposite. And what they were saying is, in this futuristic society, they set up the world where everyone's free to not have choices. Because when you have choices, the desires, the taivas, pull you to those choices. And therefore, the biggest freedom is not to be in a situation where there's a woman in front of you who's dressed in a way where she's trying to entice you, because that's not freedom. Freedom is to stay away from there, and then you're free to choose yes or no. So true freedom is limiting is self-mastery, is self-control, self-choice. Choosing, freedom to choose. The true freedom is when you have a freedom to choose what you want to do, what's the best thing for you. If you are someone, and we all are, I'm not saying if you are, if there's a nice bar of chocolate in front of you, and you eat it, and you know that for your health, either for diabetes or for your weight or for your cholesterol or whatever other reason, you should not be eating that chocolate bar, how many of us, or that piece of cake or whatever else it is, how many of us end up eating the cake?
I do.
So that means, were you really free at that moment? I mean, maybe on some level you were free, but on another level, your taivas and your desires overpowered your self-control. So true freedom is when you have when you are in control of yourself, when you're winning over yourself. In the world they call it now self-mastery. To be able to be your own master. You're not a master by money, by desires, by kavod, right? There's three things. The Mishnah in Pirkei Avos says like this: Hakina, v'hataiva, v'hakavod, moitzian es ha'adam min ha'olam. Three things take a person out of the world. Kina is jealousy, taiva is desires, and kavod is glory. They take a person out of the world. What does that mean? It means that you lose your self-control. You lose your mastery. You're not your boss anymore. Because if you have jealousy, that's it. You see people, if you ever seen someone or yourself who in a situation where you're very jealous, or someone else is very jealous, you do things that are just stupid, right? They just don't make sense. You do things that are totally not in your best interests all of a sudden. In your own best interests. You do something when you're jealous, where it's not in your best interest to do. It's not beneficial for the furthering or the advancement of your own benefit, or your children's benefit, or your family's benefit. You just do it because you're jealous. That means it's moitzi you from your world. You're doing something that doesn't make sense for you to do. Taiva, desires. How many people do eat the thing that they know they shouldn't eat? Do the act that they know they shouldn't do? All kinds of different things where you know in your mind that it's wrong and I shouldn't do it, and yet you can't control yourself. And if you can't control yourself, then you're not free. You're the opposite of free. And covet's, maybe the worst. Especially, the truth is that they say it goes as you get older. It goes from taiva. When you're younger, it's much more taiva's desires. Your blood is hotter, and you have more, hormones, more desires. Later on in life, you're getting older, all you want is kavod. I don't know. That's what they say. I think kin is also somewhere in the middle. I think it goes from one to the next to the next. I forgot the order. So the idea is that these three things, they control you. They're moitzi you from your world, where you become controlled by the desires, where you become controlled by the kavod and by the taiva. And then that's the opposite. You're not free. You're the opposite of free. If you want it to be free, freedom would be where you're not controlled by your desires. So that's called freedom from. Freedom from. What happens when a person's controlled by these desires? What happens to them? What happens is they start to run after false desires. What's the Yetzer Hara? What does the Yetzer Hara do? The Yetzer Hara, the whole idea of Yetzer Hara is dimyan, how do you say dimyan in Jewish? Imagination. Makes things look good. It puts that chocolate cake and makes it like you can't control yourself. You got to eat that chocolate cake, but as soon as you're done the chocolate cake, why do you eat the chocolate cake, right? There's a famous comedian who says he doesn't understand why they make you pay at buffets or restaurants after you eat. So you should pay before you eat, because after you eat, you come to the thing and they say $50. $50 for that? I don't want it. I'm not hungry. Beforehand, if they say $50, no problem. It looks amazing. Your desire. You got to pay before when you desire it. So what the Yetzer Hara does is it makes you imagine. It takes things and puts into your mind that it's so good, it's so good, it's so good. And then when you have it, it's nothing. So you throw away your life for meaningless things. And what happens to those people? Their lives start to lack meaning. And what happens when your life lacks meaning? So there was a famous psychologist, Viktor Frankl, who has a book called, a bunch of books, but basically he invented a therapy called logotherapy, which is a therapy which provides meaning. Now, unfortunately, in the Goyish world, or in the not-from-Jewish world, you have to invent a meaning. And every person has to find their meaning, their purpose. But in the Jewish world, we're given the meaning, we're given our purpose. The Torah tells us what to do. But what happens to a person in a life without meaning? And a life without meaning, he says, leads to three things. Let's see if I remember them. Depression. No, what's alcoholism?
Addiction.
And what's the third one? No, drugs is part of addiction. Depression, addiction. I forgot the third one. But anyways, the point is like this. If you look around the world out there, you'll see that all those people, the richest people, the celebrities, the richest people, all those people out there are searching. They're searching because they're not free. They have no purpose in their life. They have no meaning in their life. Not all of them. I shouldn't say all the people out there, but there are many people. There are many people out there who, you could take that part off. There are many people out there who are searching for meaning. They're searching for purpose. And their lives, many people's lives do not have meaning, do not have purpose. And when you live a life without meaning, without purpose, that's what it means. Kinna, taiva, kavod, mitzinas a person, takes him out of the world, and then he gets stuck into depressions or addictions, addicted to whatever they're addicted for, shopping, money, love, whatever, all kinds of addictions, drugs, smoking, whatever you want to get addicted to, alcoholics, all kinds of different addictions, because they're looking to fill in those empty holes. So true freedom is only when you're freedom from. And where's the ultimate true freedom? The ultimate true freedom is when you live a life which is completely in line with the Torah. Because when Hashem, who's the master of the world, who created us, who created the world, he's able to look at the world and understand what's good for you and what's not good for you. This is not why we keep the Torah. We keep the Torah because Hashem said to keep the Torah. But a nice byproduct of keeping the Torah is that you're living your life with meaning, with purpose, and that it's constantly, when you're following the Torah completely, they say, the psychologists say that if you would follow the Torah completely, perfectly, that would cure any psychological problems. Because the root of the psychological problems is when you're living your life not in line with how you were created to be. So if you're not in parallel with how you're created to be, that's what causes psychological problems. This is getting a little too hard, too off topic. But the point is that the true Torah life is the freest life. The true Torah life is a life of true freedom. Is a life of self-control. Is a life of self-mastery. Is a life of working, a career of disciplining yourself. A career of improving yourself. A career of controlling yourself. And that's what the Torah is. It's a life of self-control. Now the Torah doesn't take away desires. It doesn't take away all different pleasures. It limits the desires, and it limits the pleasures, and it puts them into boundaries. So, do we say you're not allowed to eat? No, of course you're allowed to eat, but you have to make a bracha before. You have to make a bracha afterwards. It has to be kosher food. It can't be milk and meat together. Right? It has
not on Yom Kippur.
It can't be on Yom Kippur, right? There's times of the year where you can't eat. There's times of the day before Shachris you shouldn't eat, unless you're older or whatever. Before Shachris you shouldn't eat. There's times of the year, there's times of the day where you're not allowed to eat. There's ways you're supposed to eat. There's how to prepare it. There's what you're allowed to eat. So all of a sudden, every time that you eat, you may not realize this, but every time that, and there's also the proper thoughts you're supposed to have when you eat. I'm eating l'shem shemaim. I'm eating to give me strength. I'm eating to give me strength to serve Hashem, to give me strength to continue to live, and you're supposed to try to eat healthy. So all of a sudden, every time that you eat, it's transformed from being just a free-for-all eating to being a controlled eating with following, and you're following so many mitzvahs. Every time you eat, you're not doing so many things. You're making brachas. You're making a bracha afterwards, and it transforms the eating into a mitzvah. And there's so many different mitzvahs involved with sitting down to one meal. What about other pleasures? The pleasure of living with someone. So, do we say like the other religions, some other religions that say, oh, if you want to be holy, you can't get married? No. If you want to be holy, you could do it, but it has to be during the proper times of the month, and it has to be only after you get married. It has to be only in the proper setting. So every single physical pleasure is allowed, but it's allowed in moderation, within the proper boundaries, within the proper restrictions, and that controls it, and that gives you the ability to control it. And that's what really the Torah does for us. One of the things that the Torah does for us, and that's what it means, freedom. And therefore, the answer to the question is like this: did we go out of Mitzrayim from Avdus to Avdus, or do we go out of Mitzrayim from Avdus to Cherus? And the answer is that being an Eved Hashem is the true form of Cherus. Avdus to Hashem is Cherus, so they're both true. We went out of Mitzrayim from Avdus to Avdus, but going from Avdus to Para, to being, from going from Avdus to the Yetzer Hara, or to Para, to other people, to Avdei Hashem, is going from Avdus to Cherus. That's what Cherus is. Cherus is serving Hashem, and it's actually a medrash. The pasuk says like this: the words of the Torah were written Charas al haluchos. Charas pasha means carved onto the luchos, and I think it's the Gemara or medrash says Al turkei charas ala chayrus. Don't read charas ala chayrus. Ein ben chayren, you're not a ben chayren, ala mish oisik b'Torah. The only way that you could be a ben chayren, the only way you could be free is if you're mevatel yourself, if you subjugate yourself to the Torah. That's chayrus. So we went from avdus to chayrus. We went from avdus to freedom. But freedom, true freedom is freedom from. True freedom is freedom to choose. But freedom to choose not where your Yetzer Hara is choosing, not where your taivas are choosing, not where your peer pressure is choosing, not where your addiction is choosing, not where your depression is choosing, but true choosing where your mind is choosing. True choosing when you're doing what's ultimately the most beneficial thing without any other outside force pulling you in a direction which is not best for you. That's what true freedom means. And the only way to have the true freedom is to be Isaac B'Torah, is to be mevatel yourself to the Torah. That's the only way to have the true freedom. That's a synopsis of what freedom is. Now, very interesting over here. We have a few more minutes. Very interesting. If you continue on over here in the Medrash in Kiseitze, so it says like this: like Dibur Torah Keneged Yetzer Hara. The Torah is talking Keneged Yetzer Hara, and the Torah says like this: Shem Ein HaKadosh Baruch Hu Matira. If Hashem is not going to make it mutter, Yisena be'Isser. You're going to marry her be'Isser. So therefore, the Torah makes it usher, right? But look at the next words. And if you look mutter. But if you look at the next words in the parsha, what's the next parsha? It's not connected to this. It talks about when a person has two wives, achas ahuva v'achas snua. Talks about that. So yeah, and then the next thing is ben Sarah Amora. And what does the Torah tell us? The Medrash tells us, Aval Nasa, but if you do marry this woman, I want to just give you a little warning. Sofer liyasayna, you're going to come to hate her. Sofer lohalim mena ben Sarah, and then you're going to come to ben Sarah. Why are you going to come to hate her? Why are you going to come to hate her? It's a very powerful idea over here. If you ever want to know in your heart whether the thing that you did, right? We're saying that you could have physical pleasure, and there's nothing wrong with that. But yet you could have physical pleasure, and it's taiva. And as soon as it's in the realm of giving into your taivas, it's not so good anymore. Because when you're doing taivas, you're training yourself to go after taivas, dangerous. How do you know if something's taiva or if something's okay? You know? If it's taiva, you're going to hate it. If you just did something, where, let's say, you ate that chocolate cake, where you knew you didn't want to eat that chocolate cake, and you knew you were trying to be on a diet, and not only that, but you just passed up a million other things, and for some reason you can't control yourself with that chocolate cake, you're going to feel very unhappy. It's going to cause, anytime you give into taiva is fake. The whole idea of taiva is, the Yetzer Hara builds up the thing in front of your eyes, and makes you feel like this thing is incredible, and that you can't live without it. And the longer you sit there looking at it, the worse it gets. That's taiva. But you know how you know if it's taiva? If you don't feel good about it afterwards. Whenever you give in to your taivas, you will not feel good about it afterwards. Because as soon as you give in to the taiva, you know what happens? The taiva's gone. Try it one time. Go to a buffet somewhere. Eat the whole buffet. Look at the buffet, seriously. Look at the buffet before, and be like, so good, this looks good, everything looks amazing. You can't even figure out what you want first. Then after you're finished eating and you ate a lot, go do it by any time they have a dessert bar upstairs. Anytime. Try it one time. Go there, look at the dessert bar, see which thing you like best. You can't figure out what you like best. I like everything the best, right? Everything's so good. Eat a lot, just try it one time. Eat a ton, just pig out, right? Right? Just eat it all. Seriously, do it one time. Try it. Eat it all. Then go back and look at it. And tell me what you think. You know what you're going to think? Ew. When you're stuffed, you look at that stuff. That's just a bunch of margarine and sugar. That's what happens. And the reason why it happens like that is because the Yetzer Hara is gone. And as soon as the Yetzer Hara is gone, it reverts back to being what it is, which is just a bunch of margarine and sugar, which is just going to clog your arteries and make you fat and whatever else, right? And that's what happens. And that's what taiva is. Taiva builds up the thing and makes you desire it. And as soon as the taiva is gone, you hate it. But I want to tell you, that feeling doesn't last. Because as soon as you get hungry again, or as soon as it starts to wear off a little bit, all of a sudden the Yetzer Hara is back. building that thing back up again, and all of a sudden that chocolate cake looks so good again. And it's like a cycle. It looks good, it doesn't look good. You eat it, you go away from it a little bit. Oh, I want it so badly. And this is for any taiva. Any taiva, that's how taiva works. And that's why you hate this woman. You hate this woman because she resembles taiva. You gave in to your taivas, and you know you gave in to your taivas. And that's why you hate her. You hate her because she is the embodiment of you giving into your taivas. And the woman who you married properly, who you were supposed to marry, who you looked into, and it was the right shidduch for you, and it was the right situation, so there's nothing wrong with that action. The opposite. That action's a holy action. It's the same action. But that action is a holy action, and its source is not from taiva. Yeah, of course there's a natural desire. There's a natural desire to eat. There's a natural desire to do anything. But it was a controlled taiva. It was taiva which was done at the right place, at the right time, in the right situation, according to the right rules, following the proper guidelines, not in excess, and then it doesn't become taiva. It becomes pleasure, which is okay to have. Just like when we sit and we eat a normal meal in moderation, which is kosher, which is not overeating, we don't feel bad after we finish eating. Even if you have one piece of cake, and you're not on a major diet, and it's not unhealthy for you, you have a little piece of cake. There's nothing wrong with that. Most people don't have a little piece of cake and feel depressed and guilty for the rest of their day. If you take 6 pieces of cake, all of a sudden the rest of your day is going to be depressed. If you're trying hard not to eat the cake and you give in to the cake, you're going to be depressed. But there's nothing wrong with eating a little piece of cake. It's kosher. It's in moderation. You made a bracha before. You made a bracha afterwards. Eat the cake. What's wrong? Hashem gave you the cake to enjoy the world, to have strength. He put sugar in this world. He put pleasure in the world. It's not, as long as it's not taiva, as long as it's not in excess. Same thing with kavod. You're allowed to have some level of kavod. You're allowed to have respect. But when it's in excess, you don't feel good. When it's in excess, it doesn't feel right.